the Egyptian Theater at the 15th edition of the TCM Classic Film Festival to watch a nitrate print.
Not really.
I want to thank TCM for inviting me, along with Netflix, the American Cinematheque, for this beautifully restored Egyptian theater. It occurred to me back in the green room, I've been standing in front of this screen for nearly 20 years, and I've never been more thrilled than I am this morning. This print of Night Has 1,000 Eyes was one of 637 nitrate prints donated to UCLA, the Film and Television Archive, by Paramount Pictures after the sale of the pre-1948 library to Universal Studios. So TCM and I would like to thank, again, the UCLA Film and Television Archive, particularly Stacy Hogsett and the collection service team for their care and expertise in conserving approximately 160,000 reels of nitrate stored in the 120 vaults of UCLA's state-of-the-art facility in Santa Clarita, California. I'd also like to thank the archive director, Mei Hong Guang, my good friend Todd Weiner. And lest we forget, if David Packard hadn't built the facility in Santa Clarita, we would not be here today. So thank you for that. And we certainly wouldn't be seeing the print projected in this theater if it weren't for the Hollywood Foreign Press, who funded the capability of the Egyptian to project nitrate film before Netflix's epic refurbishment of the theater. And thanks again to our projectionist this morning, Ben Tucker, who has the qualifications and expertise to project this 76-year-old nitrate print. Night Has 1,000 Eyes was adapted from the 1945 novel by Cornell Woolrich, who is the greatest and most prolific writer of suspense fiction, bar none. 24 crime novels, 200 short stories. Born Cornell George Hopley Woolrich, he used his middle name as a pseudonym when he published Night Has 1,000 Eyes. He also used the nom de plume William Irish for Phantom Lady and many of his other stories. Woolrich's movies adaptations outstrip that of any other writer who comes to mind. 40 of his stories have been adapted for the screen, including Rear Window, which is projected here, The Window, The Leopard Man, Phantom Lady, I Wouldn't Be in Your Shoes, The Chase, The Bride Wore Black, On Dangerous Night, as Yul Brynner might put it, etc., etc. So, Cornell Woolrich wasn't just a mystery writer, he really could make our flesh crawl. I think he was the 20th century equivalent of Edgar Allan Poe. And like Poe, Woolrich lived this desolate existence. He wrote about noir and he lived it. He spent most of his life as a recluse, shut up in a hotel room with his mother in New York City. And after his mother died in 1957, Woolrich began a slow decline to the grave. When he died in 1968, he left no survivors and 5 people showed up at his funeral. However, his work lives on. Although most of his earlier adaptations were consigned to B movies, some worthy, some not, the rights to Night Has 1,000 Eyes were snapped up by Paramount with A-list director John Farrow slated to helm the film from an adapted script by Jonathan Latimer and Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon was a pseudonym for Alfred Edgar Higgs, by the way. I want to talk a little bit about John Farrow, the director. He was a unique character in a town that was already full of them. He was born in Australia. He left home after high school, sailed all over the Pacific, including a voyage with the pioneer documentarian Robert Flaherty that piqued his interest in writing and film. He began as a writer for Silence. He married actress Maureen O'Sullivan in 1936. They eventually had 6 children, including Mia Farrow. He began his directorial career helming B films at RKO, and his picture 5 Came Back was really his breakthrough in 1939 Sleeper. And after he served in World War II, he returned to Hollywood, and he really hit his stride at Paramount in the late 40s. And he teamed up with a former detective fiction scribe turned Hollywood screenwriter, Jonathan Latimer, and really made some terrific films, some of which are my favorites, including The Big Clock, Alias Nick Beale, and Night Has 1,000 Eyes. And Latimer and Farrow ultimately collaborated on 10 feature films into the 1950s. Now, Farrow was a devout Catholic who wrote biographies of the saints and was head priests and was very, very religious, but he was not always popular with crews and actors. He could be really a tough taskmaster on set. And then he had this lifestyle that was really a dichotomy of his spiritual sides. Robert Mitchum always said Johnny Farrow was the only director he worked with that got out drinking. And that took some doing. And in fact, Mitchum asked him on a night out to a bar, he said, they looked at Farrow and he said, did you ever dare to go to confession? This was before Farrow did a dozen takes of Mitchum falling down a flight of stairs and Where Danger Lives that put a strain on their relationship. In the adaptation of Woolrich's grim, suspenseful story you're about to see, I think you will see how Farrow's religious bent really influenced the script in this movie. Night Has a Thousand Eyes benefits from an outstanding cast headed by the one, the only Edward G. Robinson. Edward G. was not only one of the great actors of screen and stage, he was a true Renaissance man who spoke 8 different languages and at one time owned the most impressive collection of impressionistic art in the world. He was a great humanitarian, a great supporter of social causes, who recovered from being blacklisted or graylisted during the 1950s. And everyone who knew him said that Eddie Robinson was just a prince of a fellow who realized that life offered a much bigger and fulfilling existence beyond Hollywood and the movies. And I must say, even though Robinson gives a tremendous performance in this film as a phony stage medium who suddenly discovers he can actually predict the future with cataclysmic results, he termed in his memoir, Night of a Thousand Eyes, as, quote, unadulterated hokum I did for the money. Wow. EGR was a serious person, but come on, a certain amount of hokum is good for the soul, let's face it. According to his granddaughter, Francesca, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, EGR's favorite films included Dr. Ehrlich's Magic Bullet, Double Indemnity, and in his later pictures, The Cincinnati Kid. But I have to say, Edward G. Robinson never gave a bad performance in his life.
Absolutely.
Two other leading principal players are Gail Russell and John Lund. Voluminous Russell really was one of Hollywood's saddest stories. She was signed to a studio contract at age 17 after a pair of hitchhiking Santa Monica kids were picked up by a Paramount casting director who said, we have a classmate in our high school, Santa Monica High School, who's more beautiful than Hedy Lamarr. Such things, stars were made. Her first really featured role was The Uninvited, and director Louis Allen and Ray Milland had to coach her through the scenes because she'd go up on her lines and burst into tears. She began to drink to alleviate her anxiety, and it became a tragic addiction that would end her life prematurely. But she became a very effective actress, and in Night of a Thousand Eyes, she really provides a gifted performance. And John Lund was a very handsome and underrated leading man of the mid-40s, Paramount, To Each His Own, A Foreign Affair, No Man of Her Own. Billy Wilder never could understand why he did not become a major star. And then as a confused police detective trying to sort out fact from prognostication, the great William Demarest can't decide whether Sturgis comedy. There's a number of familiar faces, Jerome Cowan, Virginia Bruce, Onslow Stevens, Roman Bonin, but in the end, this movie belongs to Edward G. Robinson and Cornell Woolrich. We'll also get a good look at historic Bunker Hill, Long Pond from downtown LA, via Robinson's flat at the old Sunshine Apartments on West 3rd Street, right next to Asia's flat. Good to see that. And although Night Has a Thousand Eyes wasn't a box office success and received mixed reviews, it remains a compelling film with a stirring performance by one of the 20th century's greatest actors. It's a scintillating adaptation of the literary world's true master of suspense, Cornell Woolrich, who wrote this quote from an ancient Greek philosopher in the front page of The Night Has a Thousand Eyes. Thus death is nothing terrible, but the opinion we have of death, that is terrible. Because that wherein is where the terror lieth. So you should. You will be. Enjoy night as a thousand.